Hi everyone, Luke here from Weekend Tour Pros. You're joining me again today in the studio at Portsmouth Golf Centre as we review a brand new wedge for 2024, the Wilson Staff Model ZM Wedge. Now this wedge comes in at 20 to 25% cheaper than all of the other main manufacturers. So what I'm keen to find out today is, for that cheaper price point, do you have to compromise on performance and quality? Let's put it to the test. So I've just got the Wilson Staff ZM Wedge in my hand for the very first time, and first impressions are it's a really nice looking wedge actually. On the back of the club you've got all of the different logos, the Wilson Staff model, the ZM grooves, the forged wording, and some little bit of milling that just feels really nice when you run your finger over it. The sole design is really nice. It's got the number of the loft and the bounce on it, and you can really see that kind of bounce showing on the side of it when you look at it side on. It does inspire a little bit of confidence. When we put the club down at address, one of the things that's really interesting is Wilson telling us in their write-up they've taken a lot of inspiration from the feedback from their tour players who were looking for a slightly straighter leading edge to this golf club. Now for me personally, I think it's still got a good bit of curvature to it, and as a handicap golfer I really like that because it gives me the confidence that I'm not going to dig that leading edge in, and there's going to be a little bit of forgiveness in there whilst also appealing to the more better skilled player like their tour players. In terms of the rest of the wedge, we've got the ZM grooves. That's where the name of this wedge comes from, and what Wilson are doing here is they're trying to do like all of the other main manufacturers, which is maximize the amount of time that the ball and club stay in contact together to try and maximize that spin and make it as consistent as possible. And they're saying their ZM groove design, which allows them to have slightly deeper grooves, is enabling to do that. In terms of everything else about the wedge, just looks like any other really good wedge on the market today. The final thing to call out, and this might be a surprise to some of you watching this video, is the amount of versatility and options that are available in these Wilson wedges. They go from a 48-degree wedge all the way up to a 64-degree in the high toe option. You've then got everything in the middle. You've also got low, mid and high bounce options. So there's definitely everything for the different golfer out there, including left and right-handed, and I'm putting that data on screen for you right now. The other thing to call out as well is if you are going to buy these off of the rack and you aren't able to go for a fitting, Wilson have also got a really helpful guide on which wedge might be appropriate for different levels of player based on your skill set and also the ground conditions that you play. I'll also put that on screen for you now to take a little look at. So my first impressions are we are certainly not compromising on quality. We're also not compromising on versatility at this price point. So let's hit some shots and see what happens to the performance of these wedges versus my own Vokey SM9. Nice little ball flight, flew quite nicely. Now one of the things that better players always tell me they're looking for with their launch is somewhere in the region about half the launch angle of what the static loft of the club is. So we've got a 56-degree here, so launch angle somewhere in the region about 28 would be absolutely perfect. That one's launched at 29 degrees, carried about 81, which does feel about right. As you'll see when we look at the data set in a little bit, my carry with my own 54-degree wedge, so a couple of degrees stronger, is about 85 yards. And what we can see there, ball speed 72 mile an hour, spin, which are probably one of the most important numbers that you guys are looking for here, 9778, which is a really nice spin rate. And what we can see there is it's not necessarily the best strike first out because it's right out of the toe. Another one that's launched really nicely. Me personally, I think the better player always wants to see the ball launching a little bit lower and then kind of that grab and stop. And for me personally, as someone again who hasn't got the most amount of speed, I always like to see the ball pop up a little bit more, launch a little bit more. So the 32.5 degrees that we're seeing there, that really doesn't bother me. But once again, carrying at that 80 yards, 80.9, stopping at 81.6, 0.7 yards of rollouts. That's about 2 feet of rollout, spinning at 9287. Peak height up a little bit there. I haven't got a problem with that personally. I like that land angle at 50 degrees. Gives me the confidence if I don't just get enough spin off of it, then I still am going to get some good stopping power out on the golf course. That's really nice again. The ones that hit good just feel like they're very repetitive. Again, another thing that you would want to see out of a wedge is consistency of performance. I definitely feel like I'm seeing that. If I hit it great, or if I hit it okay, it does do the same thing. Again, carrying at 79.7, totaling 80.6, stopping within 3 feet. Spin there at 9963, launch angle 30.1, peak height 54, land angle 47.7. Pulled that one ever so slightly, but it felt like I struck it a little bit nicer then. Still high on the toe side, spinning at 9264, carried at 83.4, totaling 84.4. Those launch angles are 31.7, peak heights of 62.3, and land angles of 50.2 degrees are all really strong indicators for me. Another one I've caught just a tad heavy there, high but a little bit more centered that time in terms of the strike. That one has rolled out a little bit more because the spins dropped down to 82.8 yard of carry to 84.4, 84.8 total, spinning at 8.4 and launching at 31.5. That one's nice again. I'm just catching a little bit toey today, unfortunately. I know I keep saying this on my videos lately, but seem to be in my lessons finding it out the middle, on the golf course finding it out the middle, coming to TrackMan, and I don't know if I'm just something a little bit out, but it just seems to be hitting it out of the toe so much at the moment. Carry there of 83.9, total at 84.4, spinning at 9.5. So I think all round we are seeing some really, really strong numbers out of this, and as good as any other wedge on the market for sure. I would just like to make sure that I was delivering it a little bit better. And then I do that, which is probably the best one I've hit so far. It's launched so high. Yeah, look at that. As soon as you get that centered strike out of it, you get that 89.1 yard of carry, 89.6 yards of total, just 18 inches of roll out there, spinning at 9.1, that launch at 32. Like I say, maybe better players would like to see that lower ball flight, maybe a little bit more back in their stance and dropping it in the high 20s. But for me, I like that, if I'm honest with you, I really do. That's another one that's really nice. Trying to get a little bit more centered strike on it, so I've just slowed down that club head speed ever so slightly. And interestingly, because I'm getting that better strike, we are seeing that jump up in ball speed. Carry there of 86.2, totaling 87.8. Spin was a little bit lower there, and that's because I've caught it a little bit high on the face. It's probably just a fraction heavy there. But again, just another nice golf shot with a really good launch angle. Another one that's really good. The last few, maybe I'm just starting to get my groove on a little bit here, but the last few have been really nice. Again, 71.7 of club head speed, 76.3 of ball, carrying 87.7, totaling at 88.4. So again, 0.7 yards of rollout. What's that, 2 feet? Spinning at 9.674, launch angle of 30 degrees, peak height 64, land angle of 50. Just cut across that one a little bit. As a result, we also caught a little bit out the heel. And that's probably as bad as I can hit it, I would suggest, at the moment. Carrying at 85.1, totaling at 87.6, so 2.5 yards of rollout. But we've not seen that too often from this golf club. And I think, like I say, that's ultimately down to what I'm delivering, and that spin rate of 8.969. That's a beautiful golf shot. Just slightly high toe again there. Right, done hitting shots with the Wilson Staff Wedge. I'm going to go home now and we're going to have a look at all of that TrackMan data from the full shots that you've just seen me hit and compare it to a batch of shots I hit with my own Vokey SM9 shortly before I started filming, just to see how the two data sets compare side by side and just show you how you're not giving up any performance with a wedge at this price point. So in the bay, I was really impressed by the looks and feels of the Wilson Staff ZM Wedge. Now let's take a look at the data to see if the performance matches up too. Now it's worth noting that my own wedge, what we are comparing against here, the Titleist Vokey SM9, is a 54-degree wedge bent weaker to 55 degrees versus the Wilson, which is a static 56 degrees, so there is a subtle difference there, so please bear that in mind. Starting on the left hand side, you can see that the club head speeds were similar with only 0.6 mile an hour of difference in average ball speeds and identical smash factors. As a result, I think we've got two similar speed wedges and two good data sets to compare against. With a wedge, the key things most people tell me they care about is how quickly the wedge makes the ball stop and how much spin they get. So let's dive straight into those numbers. Well, as you can see here, the difference between the carry distance and the total distance was only 1.2 yards with the Wilson Staff Wedge versus 2 yards with my Vokey. So the Wilson actually stopped quicker than my Vokey SM9, although it really is marginal and both stop incredibly quickly. As for the spin rates, as you can see, they were almost identical on average with only 11 RPM of difference. So in this test, the Wilson, which cost 25% less, stopped quicker and spanned the same as a Vokey. The one area where these two clubs did differentiate themselves ever so slightly is in the ball flight. The Vokey delivers that slightly more tour preferred ball flight, whilst the Wilson did pop up the ball a fraction higher, as you can see from the launch angles, peak heights and land angles. Now some of that difference will be due to the difference in loft, some of it will be due to the shaft and some of it will be due to my delivery. As you can see, the face angle was a little bit more closed with the Vokey on average, and that will bring that ball flight down ever so slightly. As always, I like to show you my dispersion circles. The Wilson is shown in blue, and whilst this illustrates a tighter front to back dispersion with the Vokey, it does show tighter left to right with the Wilson, and ultimately I think both are caused by me as an 11 handicapper being the biggest variable here, and I think they're both very comparable. And that's also further illustrated when I show you my impact location, favouring a slightly high toe strike with the Wilson as you saw at the start of the video, which given the numbers we've seen just shows how forgiving this wedge really is, versus a slightly lower and some more centred strikes with my Vokey. Now before we wrap up the video, I did film me hitting some partial shots with the Wilson Staff ZM Wedge just to test how easy it was to play a variety of short game shots with this wedge, so let's head back to the fitting bay and just show you how I got on. That's me just trying to hit a little 50-yarder. So nice 50-yarder, carried 55.7, totaled at 60.4, spin at 644, 6411. Right, just going to hit that back foot lower one this time. That's lovely. That's just launched really low. I'm hoping it's got a little bit of spin on it and grabbed. 63.6 yards of carry, totaling at 69, spinning at 6883. Right, forward in the stance. Keep that loft on it. There you go, it's launched a lot higher. Just look at that, yep. Carried at 57, stopped at 58.9 just by trying to release that angles a little bit as we go through. Let's try and hit the real back foot low, shaft lean chip shot. I can see that just landing on the grass and stopping after a couple of hops. Yeah, I'm not sure if TrackMan's read that one right, because it definitely stopped on the grass a lot quicker than what it's showing there. Centered strike, carrying at 34.6, totaling at 44.4. It definitely didn't feel like it did that. It does feel like I can hit the shots with it, which is great. We've got a 10 degree of bounce here today. You know, off of a mat, maybe you'd want a little bit less versus out on the grass if we were testing this, but I feel like if I just move forward here, I'm gonna try and hit the higher flopper one. I don't know if TrackMan will pick that up, but massive flop shot there. 25.7, spinning at 4831. Try and do the same again. I'm just going to go right to the front of the mat so we don't hit anything here. That's off of a mat as well, guys, so I'm able to hit that real high out the toe flopper shot. It just about catches the face. So much so that TrackMan's actually struggled to pick up the impact location of it, but it has picked up the spin rate of 5530, carrying 22.1, totaling 23.1. One more, really just smooth swing where just let the club fall on the back of the ball and see what happens with that weight of that head. It's really nice, a really nice wedge. So as you've just seen from those last set of shots, it really is easy to hit a full range of short game shots with the Wilson Staff ZM Wedge. And alongside that full shot data that we looked at earlier in the video, I can confirm that the Wilson Staff ZM Wedge performs as good as my Titleist Vokey SM9 and any other wedge that I've tested on the channel. Now that leads me nicely back to the title of this video and the thumbnail for this video, where I said stop overpaying for your wedges. Now the irony of that title isn't lost on me when I'm gaming a Titleist Vokey SM9 and using that for comparison purposes, but there is a reason for that. About 4 or 5 years ago when I had my first ever wedge fitting, it was only Titleist at the time that were offering a full range of options for left-handed golfers like me and a true custom fitting experience exactly the same as right-handed golfers were getting. However, as we've seen from the Wilson versatility in their wedges at the start of this video, lots of manufacturers are catching up in their left-handed options, and the next time I get custom fitted for wedges, I would absolutely consider these Wilson Staff ZM wedges and a couple of other options that appeal to me on the market today. Now all that's left for me to say is if you like the video, please do hit that thumbs up button. It really does help golfers like you to find my video on YouTube. And if you're not yet following Weekend Tour Pros, hit that subscribe button down below. And if you also ring that bell icon, you'll get notified of every single one of my videos as they land on YouTube every single week. Thank you so much for watching. Have a great day. Goodbye.